A black man named Eric tries to buy a luxury watch for his grandson, but the employees of the store humiliate him. Except the next day brings a twist that the employees never saw coming. Will their arrogance end up costing them more than they ever imagined? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Eric Jones, a 60-year-old black man, stepped out of his sleek black car, his heart still warm from the charity event he had just attended. The cool evening air brushed against his face as he walked up the path to his beautiful home. A smile played on his lips, his mind filled with the grateful faces of those he had helped tonight. "What a blessing," Eric murmured to himself, adjusting his tie. He had worked hard for everything he had, but nothing made him happier than giving back to his community. As he entered his spacious living room, Eric's eyes fell on a framed photo of his grandson, Marcus. The young man's bright smile and eager eyes filled Eric with pride. Marcus had just been accepted into an Ivy League university, a dream come true for the entire family. Eric sank into his favorite armchair, his mind drifting to the luxury watch he planned to buy for Marcus. It would be the perfect gift to celebrate this huge achievement. He could already picture the joy on Marcus's face when he opened the box. "That boy deserves the world," Eric said softly, his heart swelling with love. As he sat there, surrounded by the fruits of his hard work, Eric couldn't help but reflect on his journey. He had started with nothing, facing countless obstacles and prejudices along the way. But he had never given up, driven by a deep desire to create a better life for his family and community. Now, as a successful entrepreneur, Eric used his resources to lift others up. He believed in the power of education and opportunity, just like the ones Marcus was about to experience at university. Eric's eyes misted over as he thought about how far they had come. From the struggles of his youth to the triumphs of today, every step had been worth it. And now, watching Marcus reach for the stars, Eric felt a sense of fulfillment that no amount of personal success could match. With renewed energy, Eric stood up and walked to his study. He had some research to do on luxury watches. Only the best would do for his grandson, a symbol of the bright future ahead and the unwavering support of his family. As he sat at his desk, Eric's heart was full of gratitude and excitement. Tomorrow would bring a new day, a new opportunity to make a difference, and the chance to find the perfect gift for Marcus. The soft glow of the computer screen illuminated Eric's face as he scrolled through page after page of luxury watches. His eyes, though tired, remained focused and determined. All through the night, he searched, driven by the desire to find the perfect timepiece for Marcus. "It has to be just right," Eric murmured, rubbing his eyes. Eric finally closed his laptop. He hadn't found exactly what he was looking for, but he had some ideas. A brief evening rest and a warm cup of tea later, he was ready to face the night. The next day afternoon, Eric attended another charity event. His heart swelled with joy as he shook hands and chatted with community members. Their gratitude and hope fueled his own sense of purpose. As the event wound down, Eric checked his watch. There was still time to visit that high-end watch store he'd been thinking about. Maybe seeing the watches in person would help him make a decision. "I think I'll head over to Timeless Treasures," he told his assistant. "It's time to find that perfect gift for Marcus." The drive to the prestigious watch store was short. Eric parked his car and took a deep breath, excitement bubbling in his chest. Eric stepped into the upscale watch store, the soft chime of the door announcing his arrival. He was still dressed in his casual clothes from the charity event, a simple polo shirt and khaki pants. The store's atmosphere immediately enveloped him, a world of luxury and refinement. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceiling, casting a warm glow over glass display cases filled with glittering timepieces. The air was thick with the scent of leather and polished wood. Soft classical music played in the background, barely audible above the hushed conversations of well-dressed customers. Eric's eyes swept across the store, taking in the opulent surroundings. He couldn't help but notice the stark contrast between his casual attire and the tailored suits and designer dresses worn by the other patrons. For a brief moment, he felt a twinge of self-consciousness. A group of customers nearby glanced in his direction, their eyes lingering a bit too long on his casual outfit. Eric straightened his shoulders, reminding himself of who he was and why he was there. He might not be dressed like the typical customer, but he had every right to be there. With a deep breath, Eric approached one of the gleaming display cases. The watches inside were works of art, each one more intricate and beautiful than the last. Price tags with eye-watering figures were discreetly placed beside each timepiece. As Eric leaned in for a closer look, he felt the weight of curious stares on his back. He could almost hear the unspoken questions hanging in the air. What was someone dressed like him doing in a store like this? But Eric refused to let their judgments affect him. He stood tall, his eyes focused on the task at hand. He was here for Marcus, to continue a cherished family tradition. No amount of uncomfortable glances or raised eyebrows could diminish the love and pride he felt for his grandson. With renewed determination, Eric continued to browse the displays. He may have felt slightly out of place, but his confidence never wavered. He knew that somewhere in this intimidating store was the perfect watch for Marcus, and he was determined to find it. As Eric moved from one display case to another, the store employees took notice of his presence. Their eyes darted between his casual attire and the luxurious timepieces he was examining. Whispers began to circulate among the staff, accompanied by raised eyebrows and subtle nods. "Look at him," one employee murmured to another behind a perfectly manicured hand. "He's clearly in the wrong place." Another employee sniffed disdainfully. "Probably just window shopping, as if he could afford anything here." The manager, a tall woman in a crisp suit, pursed her lips as she observed Eric from across the room. She gestured to one of the junior staff members. "Keep an eye on that one," she said in a low voice. "We don't want any incidents." As Eric approached a particularly stunning display of watches, a young sales associate reluctantly made his way over. The forced smile on his face barely concealed his contempt. "Can I assist you with anything?" the associate asked, his tone suggesting he'd rather be doing anything else. Eric, oblivious to the employee's attitude, smiled warmly. "Yes, please. I'm looking for a special watch for my grandson. He's just been accepted into an Ivy League university." The associate's eyes narrowed slightly, clearly doubting Eric's story. "I see," he replied coldly. "Well, these watches are quite expensive. Perhaps I could show you something more suitable?" Eric's brow furrowed slightly at the condescending tone, but he remained polite. "Actually, I'd like to see that one," he said, pointing to a beautiful gold watch with a leather strap. The associate hesitated, glancing nervously at his manager. "Sir, that particular piece is very valuable. Are you sure you wouldn't prefer to look at something else?" As Eric opened his mouth to respond, another employee approached, whispering something to his colleague. Both of them cast dubious looks in Eric's direction. The atmosphere in the store had shifted. Other customers were now watching the scene unfold, some with curiosity, others with poorly concealed amusement. The employees continued to exchange knowing glances, their body language clearly communicating their belief that Eric didn't belong in their prestigious establishment. Despite the growing tension, Eric remained calm and dignified. He took a deep breath, preparing to address the employee's behavior. Eric approached the display case with a calm demeanor, his eyes fixed on a stunning gold watch with intricate details. He pointed to it, his voice steady and polite. "I'd like to see that one, please." The employees exchanged knowing glances, their smirks barely concealed. The young sales associate hesitated before reaching for the watch, his movements slow and deliberate. "Are you sure, sir?" he asked, his tone dripping with condescension. "This particular timepiece is quite exclusive." Eric nodded, maintaining his composure. "Yes, I'm sure. It looks perfect for my grandson." With a dramatic sigh, the associate carefully removed the watch from the case and placed it on the counter. "This is a limited edition piece," he explained, his voice laced with doubt. "It's priced at $25,000. Another employee chimed in, her voice sickeningly sweet. "Perhaps we could show you something more suitable? We have some lovely options in our budget-friendly section." Eric's eyes narrowed slightly, but he kept his voice even. "Thank you, but I'm interested in this watch. May I take a closer look?" The first associate pushed the watch towards Eric with obvious reluctance. "Of course, sir, but please be careful. It's very delicate." As Eric examined the watch, the employees continued their hushed conversation behind him. "Can you believe this?" one whispered. "He's probably just wasting our time." "I bet he's never even seen this much money in his life," another added with a snicker. Eric pretended not to hear their comments, focusing instead on the beautiful craftsmanship of the watch. He turned it over in his hands, admiring the intricate details and superior quality. The manager approached, her fake smile barely masking her impatience. "Sir, while we appreciate your interest, perhaps I could show you some of our more accessible options? We have some lovely watches that might be more within your reach." Eric looked up, meeting the manager's gaze with quiet dignity. Despite the employee's rudeness, he remained calm and composed, ready to address their behavior. Eric took a deep breath, centering himself as he faced the growing hostility from the store employees. Despite their rudeness, he maintained his composure, determined to handle the situation with grace and dignity. "I appreciate your concern," Eric said calmly, addressing the manager, "but I'm quite interested in this particular watch. Could you tell me more about its features?" The manager's smile tightened, her patience clearly wearing thin. "Well, sir, as I mentioned, it's a very exclusive piece. The intricacies of its craftsmanship might be difficult to appreciate without a certain level of expertise." Eric nodded, undeterred. "I see. And what about the movement? Is it automatic or quartz?" The sales associate rolled his eyes, not bothering to hide his disdain. "It's an automatic movement, of course, but sir, perhaps we're getting ahead of ourselves. These watches require a significant investment and proper care. Are you sure you understand what you're looking at?" The sting of their words hit Eric hard, but he refused to let it show. He'd faced discrimination before, and he knew how to handle it with poise. Instead of responding to their insults, he focused on the watch in his hands. "The craftsmanship is truly remarkable," Eric mused, his voice steady. "My grandson would cherish this for a lifetime." The employees exchanged exasperated glances. One of them muttered under her breath, as if he could afford it, "We're wasting our time here." Eric heard the comment but chose to ignore it. He gently placed the watch back on the counter and looked at the manager. "I'd like to purchase this watch, please." The manager's fake smile faltered, replaced by a look of disbelief. "Sir, I don't think you understand. This watch costs $25,000. Perhaps we should look at something more in your price range?" Eric felt a familiar pain in his chest, the weight of prejudice he'd carried for years. But he stood tall, his dignity intact. He knew he had the means to buy the watch many times over, but that wasn't the point. The blatant discrimination he was facing went beyond the price tag. Taking another deep breath, Eric prepared to address their behavior, determined to turn this hurtful situation into a teachable moment. Eric's heart sank as he listened to the employee's dismissive remarks. Despite his calm exterior, a storm of emotions brewed within him. He felt a familiar ache, one that reminded him of the countless times he'd faced such prejudice throughout his life. "I appreciate your concern," Eric said softly, his voice steady despite the turmoil he felt inside. "But I'm still very interested in this particular watch. It would mean a lot to my grandson." The manager exchanged a look with her colleagues, barely concealing her impatience. "Sir, perhaps we should explore some other options. Have you considered our pre-owned section? We have some lovely pieces there that might be more suitable." Eric felt a sharp pang in his chest. The implication was clear. They didn't believe he belonged in their store, let alone could afford their products. He glanced around the luxurious showroom, noticing how other customers were being treated with respect and enthusiasm. "I understand you have a pre-owned section," Eric replied, his tone remaining polite despite the hurt he felt. "But I'm interested in purchasing a new watch as a special gift. Is there a reason you don't think this one would be appropriate?" The employees shifted uncomfortably, their prejudice becoming more apparent with each passing moment. One of them cleared his throat and said, "Well, sir, these watches require a certain lifestyle to truly appreciate. Perhaps something more practical would suit your needs better." Eric felt a wave of sadness wash over him. Here he was, a successful businessman who had worked hard his entire life, being judged solely on his appearance. The anger bubbled up inside him, not just for himself, but for everyone who had ever faced such discrimination. He looked at the watch in his hand, thinking of Marcus and how proud he was of his grandson's achievements. Eric had hoped this shopping experience would be a joyous one, filled with excitement about the future. Instead, it had become a painful reminder of the prejudices that still existed in the world. Taking a deep breath, Eric gently placed the watch back on the counter. He looked at each of the employees, his gaze steady and filled with a mixture of disappointment and resolve. The weight of the moment hung heavy in the air as Eric prepared to address their behavior, determined to turn this hurtful situation into an opportunity for growth and understanding. Eric quietly turned away from the counter, his heart heavy with disappointment. He walked towards the exit, each step measured and deliberate. As he reached for the door handle, he paused for a moment, taking a deep breath to compose himself. Stepping out onto the bustling sidewalk, Eric blinked against the bright afternoon sun. The noise of the city enveloped him, a stark contrast to the tense silence he'd left behind in the store. He began to walk, his mind replaying the hurtful encounter over and over again. As he strolled along the busy street, Eric's thoughts drifted to his long journey of success. He remembered the countless obstacles he'd overcome, the late nights spent building his business from the ground up, and the unwavering determination that had carried him through it all. Yet here he was, decades later, still being judged by the color of his skin rather than the content of his character. The pain of the experience weighed heavily on his shoulders. Eric had faced discrimination before, but each instance stung anew, reminding him that no amount of success could fully shield him from prejudice. He thought of his grandson, Marcus, and the world he would inherit. The idea that Marcus might face similar treatment in the future filled Eric with a profound sadness. As he walked, Eric noticed his reflection in a store window. He saw a dignified man, successful and accomplished, yet invisible to those who couldn't see past their own biases. The contrast between who he knew himself to be and how others perceived him was stark and painful. Despite the hurt, Eric felt a familiar resolve stirring within him. He had always believed in meeting ignorance with grace, in being the change he wanted to see in the world. This situation, as painful as it was, would not change that fundamental aspect of his character. Eric decided he would not let this experience embitter him. Instead, he would use it as fuel for his ongoing efforts to create a more just and equitable world. He would continue to lead by example, to treat others with kindness and respect, regardless of how they treated him. That evening, Eric made his way to a cozy restaurant in the heart of the city. The warm glow of the lights inside offered a welcoming respite from the day's events. As he entered, he spotted his close friend, William Clark, already seated at their usual table. William stood up with a broad smile, embracing Eric warmly. "Eric, my friend, it's so good to see you," he said, his voice filled with genuine affection. Eric returned the smile, feeling some of the tension from earlier begin to melt away. "William, it's always a pleasure," he replied, taking his seat across from his friend. The two men settled into an easy conversation, catching up on recent events in their lives. William, a prominent philanthropist, shared stories about his latest charitable endeavors, his eyes lighting up as he described the positive impact they were making in the community. Eric listened intently, nodding and offering words of encouragement. He felt a sense of pride in his friend's accomplishments, remembering the young man William had been when they first met years ago. As they enjoyed their meal, the conversation flowed naturally from topic to topic. They discussed their families, with Eric beaming as he mentioned Marcus's acceptance into an Ivy League university. William raised his glass in a toast to Eric's grandson's success. Throughout the evening, Eric found himself relaxing, the warmth of friendship and good food helping to soothe the ache from the day's earlier encounter. He laughed at William's jokes and shared his own stories, carefully avoiding any mention of the incident at the watch store. As the night wore on, Eric realized how grateful he was for this friendship. In William's company, He felt seen and valued for who he truly was. The stark contrast between this dinner and his experience earlier in the day was not lost on Eric, but he chose to focus on the positive energy of the present moment. As the evening progressed, William leaned forward, a glint of excitement in his eyes. "Eric, I have an important meeting tomorrow morning. I'd be honored if you'd join me," he said, his voice warm and inviting. Eric raised an eyebrow, intrigued by the invitation. "Oh? What's this about, William?" he asked, his curiosity piqued. William smiled, a hint of mystery in his expression. "Let's just say it's a matter close to both our hearts. Your wisdom and experience would be invaluable," he explained, his tone sincere. Eric felt a surge of warmth at his friend's words. It touched him deeply to know that William valued his input so highly. Without hesitation, he nodded. "Of course, I'd be happy to join you," he replied, his voice filled with genuine enthusiasm. William's face lit up with joy. "Wonderful. I'll pick you up at 9 a.m. sharp. Trust me, you won't regret it," he said, his excitement infectious. As they finished their meal, Eric found himself looking forward to the next day. The prospect of accompanying William on this mysterious agenda lifted his spirits, pushing the unpleasant memories of the watch store incident further from his mind. They said their goodbyes outside the restaurant, sharing another warm embrace. As Eric watched William's car disappear into the night, he felt a sense of anticipation building within him. Whatever tomorrow held, he was grateful for the friendship that had brought this opportunity his way. That night, as Eric prepared for bed, his thoughts drifted to the upcoming day. He wondered what William had planned, but more than that, he felt touched by his friend's desire to include him. It was a reminder of the bonds that truly mattered in life, the connections that saw beyond surface appearances to the heart of a person. The next morning, the high-end watch store was a flurry of activity. Employees bustled about, polishing display cases and adjusting their already impeccable uniforms. The air crackled with anticipation as they prepared for a very special visitor. "I heard he's worth billions," one employee whispered excitedly to another. "And he's known for his incredible philanthropy," added another, straightening a row of gleaming watches. The store manager clapped his hands, drawing everyone's attention. "Listen up, everyone. William Clark will be here any minute. This is our chance to impress one of the most influential men in the country. Everything must be perfect." The employees nodded eagerly, their eyes shining with the prospect of serving such an esteemed customer. They imagined the potential commissions and the bragging rights that would come with making a sale to William Clark. As they scurried about, making last-minute adjustments, none of them gave a thought to the man they had rudely dismissed the day before. Eric's encounter with them was far from their minds, overshadowed by the excitement of the impending visit. Little did they know that Eric was not only William Clark's close friend, but also his mentor and trusted advisor. The man they had judged so harshly based on his appearance was, in fact, deeply connected to the very person they were so eager to impress. The employees continued their preparations, oblivious to the irony of the situation. They chatted among themselves, speculating about William Clark's tastes and what kind of watch he might be interested in purchasing. "I bet he'll go for the most expensive piece we have," one employee said confidently. "Of course he will," another agreed. "A man like that only deserves the best." As the minutes ticked by, the anticipation in the store grew. The employees stood at attention, ready to offer their most obsequious service to the philanthropist they admired so much. They remained completely unaware of the lesson in humility and respect that awaited them. William Clark and Eric entered the store together, their easy camaraderie evident in their relaxed smiles and gentle banter. The store's atmosphere, previously buzzing with anticipation, suddenly froze. The employees' eyes widened in shock as they recognized Eric, the very man they had treated so poorly just yesterday. A hush fell over the room, the silence broken only by the soft ticking of countless luxury watches. The employees stood rooted to their spots, their faces a mix of confusion and dawning horror. William, oblivious to the tension, turned to Eric with a warm smile. "Well, my friend, shall we take a look at that watch you were interested in?" Eric nodded, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the panic spreading across the employees' faces. "Of course, William. It's right over here." As Eric led William to the display case, the employees exchanged frantic glances. They realized, with sinking hearts, that Eric was not just any customer. He was a longtime friend and mentor to the philanthropist they had been so eager to impress. The store manager, his face pale, stepped forward with a forced smile. "Mr. Clark, welcome to our store. We're honored to have you here." William nodded politely, but his attention was on Eric. "Eric, why don't you show me the watch you liked? I'm curious to see what caught your eye." As Eric began to describe the watch, the employees listened in stunned silence. They watched as William hung on Eric's every word, clearly valuing his opinion and expertise. The respect and admiration William showed for Eric was unmistakable. The reality of their mistake weighed heavily on the employees. They had judged a book by its cover, and now they were face to face with the consequences of their actions. The man they had dismissed and disrespected was, in fact, a respected mentor to one of the most influential people in their world. The employees' earlier arrogance evaporated like morning mist, replaced by a nervous energy that crackled through the air. They scrambled to attention, their faces a mixture of shame and panic as they realized the gravity of their previous behavior. The store manager, his voice quavering slightly, stepped forward. "Mr. Jones, please accept our sincerest apologies for any misunderstanding yesterday. We would be honored to assist you today." Eric regarded the manager calmly, his dignified demeanor unchanged. "Thank you," he said simply, his voice neither angry nor accusatory. The employees tripped over themselves, eager to make amends. One rushed to pull out a plush chair for Eric, while another hurried to fetch a tray of refreshments. A third employee, her hands shaking slightly, carefully brought out the watch Eric had inquired about the day before. "Here's the timepiece you were interested in, sir," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's one of our finest pieces." William watched the scene unfold with a mixture of curiosity and confusion. He leaned towards Eric, speaking softly. "They seem very eager to please. Have you been here before?" Eric nodded slightly but didn't elaborate. Instead, he turned his attention to the watch, examining it with the same careful consideration he had shown the day before. The employees hovered nearby, their earlier disdain replaced with nervous deference. They hung on Eric's every word, nodding enthusiastically at his observations and praising his excellent taste. "Mr. Jones, your eye for quality is impeccable," one employee gushed, his face flushed with embarrassment as he remembered his condescending remarks from yesterday. Another employee chimed in, her voice trembling slightly. "We would be happy to offer you our VIP service, Mr. Jones. Perhaps a private viewing room? Or would you prefer to see our most exclusive collection?" The store manager, sweat beading on his forehead, added, "Anything you desire, Mr. Jones. Our entire inventory is at your disposal." As the employees continued their frantic attempts to make amends, Eric remained calm and composed. He treated each of them with the same respect and kindness he had shown the day before, despite their earlier behavior. William Clark, sensing the tension in the air, leaned closer to Eric, his brow furrowed with concern as he watched the employee's nervous behavior. "Eric, my friend," he said softly, "is everything all right? These folks seem awfully jumpy." Eric took a deep breath, his eyes meeting William's. With a calm voice that carried a hint of sadness, he began to recount the events of the previous day. "Yesterday I came here to buy a watch for Marcus," he explained, "but I wasn't dressed in my usual business attire." As Eric spoke, the employees' faces paled. They stood frozen, their earlier eagerness replaced by looks of horror and shame. "The moment I walked in," Eric continued, "I was judged, not by the content of my character but by the color of my skin and the clothes on my back." William's expression darkened as he listened. The employees shifted uncomfortably, unable to meet Eric's gaze. Eric described how he had been treated with contempt, how the staff had assumed he couldn't afford the watches, and how they had suggested he look at more affordable options. His voice remained steady, but the pain in his eyes was clear. "They dismissed me," Eric said, implying I was wasting their time. "They even suggested I look in the pre-owned section." The store manager's face crumpled with shame. One of the employees let out a small, choked sob. William's jaw clenched, his eyes flashing with anger. But Eric placed a gentle hand on his friend's arm, a silent reminder of the dignity with which he wished to handle the situation. "I left without making a scene," Eric concluded. "But it hurt, William. It hurt to be judged so harshly based on nothing but appearances." The employees stood in stunned silence, the weight of their actions crushing down upon them. Tears welled up in the eyes of the young woman who had brought out the watch. The manager looked as if he might be sick. William, his voice tight with controlled anger, turned to the staff. "Is this true?" he demanded. "Is this how you treated my friend?" William Clark's face flushed with anger as he turned to face the trembling staff. His normally warm eyes were now blazing with indignation. "I demand an explanation," he said, his voice low and controlled, but filled with unmistakable fury. "How dare you treat my friend this way?" The employees stood frozen, their faces pale with fear and shame. The manager, a middle-aged man with graying hair, stepped forward. His hands shook as he clasped them in front of him. "Mr. Clark, sir," he began, his voice quavering. We have no excuse for our behavior. We were wrong. Terribly wrong." A young woman, the same one who had shown Eric the watch the day before, burst into tears. "We're so sorry," she sobbed, her makeup running down her cheeks. "We made awful assumptions. We judged Mr. Jones unfairly." Another employee, a young man with slicked back hair, stepped forward. His earlier arrogance had vanished, replaced by a look of sheer panic. "Please, sir," he pleaded. "We know we made a terrible mistake. We shouldn't have treated anyone that way, let alone someone as distinguished as Mr. Jones." William's gaze swept over the group, his disappointment palpable. "Do you understand the gravity of your actions?" he asked, his voice rising slightly. "Do you realize that your behavior goes against everything this establishment should stand for?" The employees nodded vigorously, their eyes wide with fear. They were acutely aware that their careers hung in the balance. The store's reputation, built over years of catering to high-end clientele, could be irreparably damaged by this incident. The manager spoke up again, his voice trembling. "Mr. Clark, Mr. Jones, we understand the seriousness of our actions. We've not only failed as employees, but as human beings. We're prepared to face any consequences for our behavior." Eric, his calm demeanor unwavering, gently placed a hand on William's shoulder. "William," he said softly, "I think it would be best if we spoke privately with the manager." He turned to the store manager, his eyes kind but serious. "Would that be all right with you?" The manager nodded quickly, relief washing over his face. "Of course, Mr. Jones. Please follow me to my office." As they walked to the back of the store, Eric could feel the eyes of the other employees on them. The tension in the air was thick, but Eric's composure seemed to have a calming effect on everyone. Once inside the manager's office, Eric took a seat across from the desk. William stood by the door, his arms crossed, still visibly upset. The manager sat behind his desk, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. Eric leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. "I want you to understand something," he began. "What happened yesterday wasn't just about me. It's about a bigger problem that affects many people every day." The manager nodded, his eyes downcast. Eric continued, "When you judge someone based on their appearance, you're not just hurting that person. You're hurting your business, your reputation, and yourself." William nodded in agreement, his anger softening as he listened to Eric's words. "Think about it," Eric said, his voice taking on a teacher-like tone. "How many potential customers have you turned away because of snap judgments? How much business have you lost because someone didn't feel welcome in your store?" The manager's face paled as the realization hit him. Eric pressed on. "Respect isn't something you reserve for certain people. It's something you give to everyone who walks through that door. That's not just good ethics, it's good business." The store manager, his face etched with remorse, leaned forward in his chair. "Mr. Jones, Mr. Clark," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "I cannot express how deeply sorry I am for what happened yesterday. It's inexcusable, and I take full responsibility for the actions of my staff." Eric nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on the manager. The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of the situation hanging in the air. The manager continued, his words coming out in a rush. "I want to make this right. Please, Mr. Jones, allow me to offer you another luxury watch of your choice, free of charge. It's the least we can do to begin to make amends for our terrible behavior." William's eyebrows shot up at the offer, but Eric remained calm, his expression thoughtful. The manager reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a catalog of their most expensive watches. "Please take your pick," the manager said, sliding the catalog across the desk towards Eric. "Any watch you want, it's yours. I know it doesn't erase what happened, but I hope it shows how serious we are about correcting our mistakes." Eric glanced at the catalog but didn't reach for it. Instead, he looked at William, then back at the manager. "That's a very generous offer," Eric said slowly, "but I'm not sure if that's the best solution here." The manager's face fell, his hopeful expression turning to one of confusion and worry. He had thought the offer would smooth things over, but Eric's response made him realize there was more to consider. Eric leaned back in his chair, his hands folded in his lap. "You see," he began, his voice gentle but firm, "this isn't about getting a free watch. It's about something much more important." The manager listened intently, hanging on Eric's every word. He could sense that Eric was about to impart some wisdom, and he was eager to hear it. Eric took a deep breath, his eyes filled with compassion as he looked at the manager. "I appreciate your offer, but I must decline," he said gently. "This situation calls for a different kind of solution." The manager's brow furrowed in confusion, but he remained silent, eager to hear what Eric had in mind. "Instead of giving me a free watch," Eric continued, his voice steady and warm, "I propose that your store donate a significant portion of its proceeds to the charity auction I'm involved with. It would make a real difference in our community." William nodded approvingly, a small smile playing on his lips. The manager's eyes widened, surprised by the unexpected suggestion. Eric leaned forward, his hands clasped on the desk. "Moreover, I believe your store could benefit from participating in community outreach programs. These programs could address inequality and discrimination, helping to prevent situations like what happened yesterday." The manager listened intently, his expression changing from surprise to thoughtful consideration. Eric's words seemed to strike a chord within him. "By engaging with the community," Eric explained, his voice warm and encouraging, "you'll not only improve your store's image but also create a more inclusive environment for all customers. It's a chance to make a lasting, positive change." William chimed in, his voice filled with admiration for his friend. "Eric's right. This could be a turning point for your business, a way to set an example for others in the industry." The manager nodded slowly, a look of understanding dawning on his face. "Mr. Jones, your suggestion is, it's more than generous. It's wise and forward-thinking. I can see why you're such a respected figure in our community." Eric smiled, his eyes twinkling with warmth. "Thank you. I believe that when we face challenges, we have an opportunity to grow and make things better for everyone." The manager straightened in his chair, a new sense of purpose evident in his posture. "I wholeheartedly agree to your proposal, Mr. Jones. We'll make the donation to your charity auction, and I'd be honored if you could guide us in setting up our community outreach programs." Eric nodded, pleased with the outcome. "I'd be more than happy to help. Together, we can turn this unfortunate incident into a catalyst for positive change." William Clark leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the store manager with unwavering intensity. His voice carried a weight of authority as he spoke. "I want to make something absolutely clear. Eric's suggestion isn't just a good idea, it's essential." The manager shifted in his seat, sensing the gravity of William's words. William continued, his tone firm but not unkind. "Our future business relationship with this store hinges entirely on your commitment to these initiatives. This isn't just about making amends, it's about creating lasting change." Eric watched his friend with a mix of gratitude and admiration. William's support was unwavering, and it touched Eric deeply to see how seriously he took the matter. "You see," William explained, his gaze softening as he glanced at Eric. Eric's opinion is one I hold in the highest regard. His wisdom and integrity have guided me for years, both in business and in life. When he speaks, I listen, and I strongly suggest you do the same. The manager nodded vigorously, his eyes darting between Eric and William. Of course, Mr. Clark. We take Mr. Jones's suggestions very seriously. We're committed to making these changes and improving our practices. William smiled, but there was a hint of steel behind it. I'm glad to hear that, because I can assure you, the influence Eric and I have in this community is substantial. Your store's reputation and its success will be greatly affected by how you handle this situation moving forward. Eric placed a gentle hand on William's arm, a silent gesture of appreciation for his friend's staunch support. The two men exchanged a look of understanding, years of friendship and mutual respect evident in that brief moment. The manager, witnessing this interaction, seemed to fully grasp the significance of the situation. He straightened his posture and addressed both men with renewed determination. Gentlemen, you have my word. We will implement these changes immediately. Mr. Jones, we would be honored to have your guidance in our community outreach efforts. The store manager took a deep breath, his eyes reflecting a mix of remorse and determination. Mr. Jones, Mr. Clark, I want to thank you both for this opportunity. We accept your terms wholeheartedly. This isn't just about making amends, it's about transforming our entire store culture. Eric nodded, a gentle smile crossing his face. That's exactly what I hope to hear. Change starts with acknowledgement and a willingness to do better. The manager turned to his employees who stood nearby, their faces a mix of shame and uncertainty. Listen up, everyone. What happened here is unacceptable, but it's also an opportunity for us all to grow. From this moment on, we treat every customer with the same respect and dignity, regardless of how they look or what they're wearing. The employees shifted uncomfortably, but there was a dawning realization in their eyes. One of them, a young woman who had been particularly dismissive of Eric the day before, stepped forward. Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke. Mr. Jones, I'm so sorry for how I treated you. I never stopped to think about the person behind the appearance. I feel ashamed, but I'm also grateful for this wake-up call. Eric's eyes softened as he looked at the young woman. Thank you for your apology. It takes courage to admit when we're wrong. The important thing now is to learn from this experience and do better moving forward. William nodded in agreement. That's right, this is a chance for all of you to grow, both personally and professionally. Treat every person who walks through that door as if they could be the next Eric Jones, because they just might be. The manager clapped his hands together, a new energy in his voice. All right, team. Let's start brainstorming ideas for our community outreach program. Mr. Jones, would you be willing to guide us in this process? Eric smiled warmly. I'd be happy to. Let's set up a meeting next week to discuss the details. In the meantime, I encourage all of you to reflect on this experience and think about how you can bring more kindness and respect into your interactions with others. As Eric and William prepared to leave, there was a palpable shift in the atmosphere of the store. The employees, though still shaken, stood a little straighter, their eyes reflecting a new understanding of the valuable lessons they had learned about humility and respect. The following week, Eric returned to the store, his steps measured and purposeful. As he entered, the atmosphere was noticeably different. The air of elitism had been replaced by a genuine warmth that seemed to radiate from every corner. The young woman who had apologized to him last time approached with a gentle smile. Welcome back, Mr. Jones. How can I assist you today? Eric nodded appreciatively. I'd like to see that watch I was interested in before, please. Of course, sir, right this way, she replied, leading him to the display case. As she carefully removed the watch, Eric noticed how her hands trembled slightly, but her voice was steady and respectful as she explained the watch's features. Eric listened intently, not just to her words, but to the sincerity in her tone. He could see the effort she was making to treat him, and by extension every customer, with genuine respect. I'll take it, Eric said with a smile. As the young woman rang up the purchase, Eric glanced around the store. He noticed new posters advertising the upcoming charity auction and community outreach programs. The other employees moved about with a new sense of purpose, treating each customer with equal attention and care. When the transaction was complete, the young woman handed Eric the beautifully wrapped package. "Mr. Jones, I want to thank you again. Your lesson has changed more than just our store policy. It's changed us." Eric felt a warmth spread through his chest. He looked down at the package in his hands, knowing that this watch now symbolized far more than just a luxury item or even a gift for his grandson. It represented change, real, meaningful change. "Thank you," Eric replied, his voice thick with emotion. "Remember, every person who walks through that door has value. Treat them all with kindness and respect, and you'll never go wrong." As Eric left the store, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The watch in his hands was more than just a timepiece. It was a testament to the power of dignity, respect, and the potential for positive change in even the most unlikely places. The night of the charity auction arrived, filled with anticipation and excitement. The grand ballroom sparkled with elegant decorations, and the air buzzed with the chatter of attendees dressed in their finest attire. Eric and William Clark stood near the entrance, greeting guests as they arrived. Eric wore a sharp black suit, the new watch gleaming on his wrist, a symbol of the change he had inspired. "Quite a turnout," William remarked, his eyes scanning the growing crowd. Eric nodded, a smile tugging at his lips. It's heartening to see so many people come together for a good cause. As the auction began, the energy in the room intensified. The auctioneer's voice rang out, describing each item with enthusiasm. When it came time for the luxury watches donated by the store, the bidding frenzy reached new heights. Eric watched with pride as paddle after paddle shot into the air, the bids climbing higher and higher. He caught the eye of the store manager across the room, who gave him a respectful nod. "Look at that," William whispered, leaning close to Eric. "Your actions have sparked something truly remarkable here." As the final gavel fell on the last watch, a thunderous applause filled the room. The store's contribution had far exceeded expectations, pushing the total funds raised to an unprecedented amount. Later in the evening, as Eric and William mingled with the guests, they overheard snippets of conversation about the positive changes happening in the community. People spoke of new educational programs, improved healthcare services, and renovated community centers, all made possible by the funds raised that night. A young woman approached Eric, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Mr. Jones, I just wanted to thank you. The scholarship fund from this auction will help me attend college next year." Eric felt a lump form in his throat. He placed a gentle hand on the young woman's shoulder. "It's people like you, with dreams and determination, that make all of this worthwhile." As the night wore on, Eric and William stood together, surveying the room filled with joy and hope. The success of the auction was evident not just in the funds raised, but in the palpable sense of community and purpose that filled the air. "We've done good, my friend," William said, clapping Eric on the back. Eric nodded, his heart full. "Yes, we have, and this is just the beginning." As the auction neared its end, William Clark stepped up to the podium, tapping the microphone gently to get everyone's attention. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to him. "Ladies and gentlemen," William began, his voice carrying across the ballroom, "I'd like to take a moment to honor someone very special, a man who turned a negative experience into a force for good. Please welcome to the stage my dear friend Eric Jones." The crowd erupted in applause as Eric made his way to the stage. He walked with quiet dignity, his new watch gleaming under the lights. As he reached the podium, William gave him a warm embrace before stepping aside. Eric looked out at the sea of faces, taking a deep breath before he began to speak. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he said, his voice steady and warm. "I'd like to share a story with you if I may." He recounted the incident at the watch store, describing the discrimination he faced with honesty but without bitterness. The audience listened intently, many shaking their heads in disbelief and sympathy. "But you see," Eric continued, his eyes twinkling, "that moment of injustice became an opportunity for change. It reminded me of the importance of kindness and respect, regardless of appearances. He went on to explain how he and William had worked with the store to transform its practices and contribute to the community. This auction, and the good it will do, is proof that second chances can lead to wonderful things, Eric said, gesturing to the room around him. The audience broke into applause once more, many rising to their feet. Eric raised his hands, encouraging them to settle down. "Let this be a reminder to all of us," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "Every interaction is a chance to show kindness. Every mistake is an opportunity to learn and grow, and every one of us has the power to turn a negative experience into something positive." As Eric finished speaking, the applause grew even louder. People stood, cheering and wiping tears from their eyes. The room was filled with a sense of inspiration and hope, all sparked by Eric's words and actions. As the applause for Eric's speech began to die down, William Clark stepped forward, placing a hand on Eric's shoulder. The gesture was filled with warmth and respect, catching Eric by surprise. "If I may," William said, his voice thick with emotion, "I'd like to add something." Eric nodded, stepping aside to allow his friend the spotlight. William turned to face the audience, his eyes shining. "What Eric didn't mention is the profound impact he's had on my life. You see, this man standing beside me isn't just my friend. He's my mentor, my inspiration." A hush fell over the crowd as William continued, his words heartfelt and sincere. "Years ago, when I was just starting out, Eric took me under his wing. He taught me about business, yes, but more importantly, he showed me what it means to be a good person." William's gaze swept across the room, making eye contact with various attendees. "Eric taught me that true success isn't measured by the money in your bank account or the watch on your wrist. It's measured by the lives you touch, the kindness you show, and the positive change you bring to the world." Tears glistened in the eyes of many audience members as William spoke. Even Eric, usually so composed, found himself blinking back emotion. "Everything I've accomplished," William said, gesturing to the charity auction around them, "is because of the values Eric instilled in me. His wisdom, his integrity, his unwavering commitment to doing what's right. These are the qualities that make him not just a successful businessman, but a truly great human being." William turned to Eric, grasping his hand firmly. "Eric, my friend, my mentor, thank you. Thank you for showing us all what it means to lead with compassion and to turn adversity into opportunity." The audience erupted into applause once more, even more enthusiastic than before. People rose to their feet, cheering and clapping, moved by the deep bond of respect between the two men. As the applause continued, the auctioneer stepped forward, his voice filled with excitement. "Ladies and gentlemen, inspired by this incredible display of friendship and mentorship, we have several new donations coming in." In the weeks following the charity auction, the high-end watch store underwent a remarkable transformation. The once exclusive establishment became a beacon of positive change in the community, embracing its new role with enthusiasm and dedication. The store manager, deeply moved by Eric's forgiveness and wisdom, took the lead in implementing new policies. He organized sensitivity training sessions for all employees, ensuring they understood the importance of treating every customer with respect and dignity, regardless of appearance or perceived wealth. The employees, still shaken by their earlier behavior, threw themselves wholeheartedly into the community outreach programs. They volunteered at local shelters, mentored underprivileged youth, and participated in job fairs to help those seeking employment in the retail sector. One particularly touching initiative involved partnering with a nearby school in a low-income neighborhood. The store employees visited regularly, teaching students about time management and the value of punctuality, skills that extended far beyond the world of luxury watches. As word spread about the store's transformation, it began attracting a more diverse clientele. People from all walks of life felt welcome and respected, creating a vibrant atmosphere that was a far cry from its former elitist ambiance. The store's commitment to charitable causes didn't go unnoticed. Local media outlets picked up the story, praising the establishment for its dedication to social responsibility. This positive publicity not only improved the store's image but also inspired other businesses in the area to follow suit. Eric and William made occasional visits to the store, always greeted with genuine smiles and respect. They watched with pride as the employees, once judgmental and arrogant, now embodied the values of kindness and equality. During one such visit, Eric overheard a young employee patiently explaining the intricacies of a watch mechanism to an elderly customer who clearly couldn't afford the timepiece. The employee's genuine interest in sharing knowledge, without any expectation of a sale, brought a warm smile to Eric's face. On a warm Saturday afternoon, Eric invited Marcus over for a special lunch. The sun streamed through the windows of Eric's cozy living room, casting a golden glow on the carefully wrapped gift box sitting on the coffee table. As Marcus arrived, his face lit up with a bright smile. "Grandpa," he exclaimed, embracing Eric tightly. Eric's eyes twinkled with pride and love. "Come in, son. I have something special for you." They settled into the comfortable armchairs, and Eric picked up the box, holding it reverently in his hands. "Marcus, I'm so proud of you for getting into that Ivy League school. You've worked hard, and you deserve this." Marcus's eyes widened as Eric handed him the box. With trembling fingers, he carefully unwrapped it, revealing the exquisite watch nestled inside. "Grandpa, it's beautiful," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Eric smiled softly. "It's more than just a watch, Marcus. It comes with a story, a lesson about life, respect, and the power of forgiveness." As Marcus listened intently, Eric recounted the events at the watch store, from the initial discrimination he faced to the transformative impact his response had on the business and the community. Tears welled up in Marcus's eyes as he absorbed his grandfather's words. "Grandpa, I can't believe you went through that. How did you stay so calm and kind?" Eric placed a gentle hand on Marcus's shoulder. "It wasn't easy, son, but I've learned that responding to hate with more hate only breeds more darkness. By choosing kindness and understanding, we can light the way for others." Marcus nodded, his fingers tracing the smooth surface of the watch. "I promise, Grandpa. I'll always remember this. I'll wear this watch not just as a reminder of time, but as a reminder of the values you've taught me: humility, respect, and the power of second chances." Eric felt a swell of emotion in his chest. "That's all I could ever ask for, Marcus. Remember, true wealth isn't in the things we own, but in the lives we touch and the positive change we create in the world." Marcus carefully put on the watch, its weight on his wrist a comforting reminder of his grandfather's wisdom. He looked up at Eric, his eyes shining with determination and love. "I vow to uphold these values, Grandpa. I'll make you proud." Eric pulled his grandson into a warm embrace, his heart full of joy and hope for the future. In that moment, he knew that the true gift wasn't the watch itself, but the legacy of compassion and integrity that would live on through Marcus. In the weeks following the incident, the store manager, Mr. Thompson, found himself deeply moved by Eric's gracious response. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was an opportunity for real change, not just in the store, but in his own life as well. One morning, Mr. Thompson called a staff meeting. The employees gathered nervously, still shaken by the recent events. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat and began. "What happened with Mr. Jones was unacceptable, but it's also shown us that we have a chance to be better." He unveiled a new set of policies designed to ensure every customer was treated with respect, regardless of their appearance or perceived wealth. "From now on," he announced, "we'll judge our success not just by our sales, but by how we make people feel when they walk through our doors." The employees listened intently as Mr. Thompson outlined the changes. There would be regular training sessions on diversity and inclusion, led by experts in the field. Customer service would be evaluated based on kindness and respect, not just on sales numbers. As the days passed, the store began to transform. Signs were put up reminding staff and customers alike about the importance of respect. The employees, at first hesitant, began to embrace the new approach. Sarah, one of the employees who had been particularly rude to Eric, found herself changed by the experience. During a training session, she shared tearfully, "I never realized how much damage my assumptions could cause. I'm learning to see people, Really see them, not just judge them. The store's atmosphere shifted noticeably. Customers from all walks of life were greeted with genuine warmth and respect. The employees found themselves feeling more fulfilled in their work, taking pride in creating a welcoming environment for everyone. Mr. Thompson reached out to Eric, inviting him to visit the store again. When Eric arrived, he was touched by the visible changes. The same employees who had once dismissed him now greeted him with sincere smiles and apologies. As he browsed the displays, Eric overheard an employee patiently explaining watch features to an elderly woman in worn clothes. The genuine kindness in the interaction brought a smile to Eric's face. As Eric stood in the transformed store, a wave of emotion washed over him. He watched the bustling activity around him, marveling at the positive changes that had taken root in just a few short weeks. The once intimidating atmosphere had given way to a warm, welcoming environment where people from all walks of life browsed side by side. Eric's eyes settled on a young black man being assisted by Sarah, the employee who had been particularly dismissive during his initial visit. Now, she was patiently explaining the intricacies of a timepiece, her genuine smile and attentive manner a stark contrast to her previous behavior. The sight filled Eric with a sense of pride and hope. He thought back to that difficult day, remembering the sting of prejudice and the weight of disappointment he had felt. But as he reflected on the journey since then, Eric realized that what could have been a moment of bitterness had instead become a catalyst for meaningful change. The store's transformation was more than just superficial. Eric could see it in the way the employees carried themselves, in the diversity of the customers who now felt comfortable browsing the luxury items, and in the community outreach programs advertised on posters near the entrance. As he walked through the store, Eric overheard snippets of conversation, employees discussing upcoming diversity training sessions, customers praising the inclusive atmosphere. Each interaction reinforced the impact of his decision to address the discrimination he had faced with grace and wisdom. Eric's heart swelled with contentment. He had always believed in the power of education and second chances, and here was living proof of those principles in action. The store had become more than just a place to buy luxury watches. It was now a beacon of respect and understanding in the community. As word spread about the store's transformation and commitment to equality, its reputation in the community began to soar. People from all walks of life started to visit, curious to see the changes for themselves. The store, once known for its exclusivity, was now celebrated for its inclusivity. Sarah, the employee who had once treated Eric with disdain, found herself at the center of this positive change. She took pride in sharing the store's new initiatives with customers, her eyes lighting up as she explained their community outreach programs. "We're not just selling watches anymore," Sarah told a customer one day. "We're building bridges and making a difference." The store's sales began to climb steadily. Customers who had previously felt unwelcome now returned, bringing friends and family with them. The diverse clientele created a vibrant atmosphere that was palpable to anyone who entered. Eric visited the store regularly, watching with satisfaction as the changes he had inspired took root. He observed the employees, noting how they carried themselves with a new sense of purpose. Their interactions with customers were genuine and warm, regardless of appearance or perceived wealth. The store manager Tom approached Eric during one of his visits. "Mr. Jones," he said, his voice filled with gratitude, "I can't thank you enough for giving us this opportunity to change. Our sales are up, but more importantly, our team feels proud of the work we're doing." Eric smiled, touched by Tom's sincerity. "It's not about the sales, Tom. It's about creating a place where everyone feels valued." As the weeks passed, the store became a model for other businesses in the area. They hosted community events, partnered with local charities, and continued to prioritize diversity and inclusion in their hiring practices. The employees, once driven solely by commission and status, now found a deeper sense of fulfillment in their work. They took pride in being advocates for positive change, sharing their experiences with customers and encouraging other businesses to follow suit. As the sun set on one warm evening, the community center buzzed with excitement. People from all walks of life gathered for a special event celebrating local businesses that had made significant contributions to charity and efforts to address inequality. The once exclusive watch store stood out among the honorees, its transformation a beacon of hope for positive change. Eric and William Clark arrived together, their presence drawing admiring glances and warm smiles from the attendees. They made their way through the crowd, stopping to chat with community members and fellow philanthropists. The mayor stepped up to the podium, her voice filled with pride as she addressed the crowd. "Tonight, we recognize those who have gone above and beyond to make our community a better place. Among them is a business that has shown us the true meaning of transformation and inclusivity." As the mayor spoke about the watch store's journey, Eric felt a wave of emotion wash over him. He thought back to that day in the store, the sting of discrimination still fresh in his memory. But now, that pain had been transformed into something beautiful and meaningful. William Clark squeezed Eric's shoulder, a gesture of support and admiration. "You did this, my friend," he whispered. "Your wisdom and grace turned a moment of injustice into a catalyst for change." The store manager and several employees took the stage to accept the award. Their faces beamed with pride as they spoke about their community initiatives and the lessons they had learned. They turned to Eric, acknowledging him as the inspiration behind their transformation. As applause filled the room, Eric felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He knew that his actions had set off a chain reaction of kindness and understanding that would continue to ripple through the community. Looking out at the diverse crowd, Eric saw a future filled with hope. He saw a community where people were judged not by their appearance, but by the content of their character. He saw businesses that understood their role in creating a more equitable society. Eric's heart swelled with joy as he realized that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars or luxury items. It was measured in the positive impact one could have on others, in the bridges built between people, and in the lessons learned and shared. Would you have treated Eric differently if you were one of the store employees? Yes or no? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear your perspective. And if you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to my channel. I am spending hours upon hours writing these heartwarming stories for you, and your support is what keeps me going.